Just check. Yeah. I will divide my eyes between screens. Sometime I will look at this direction, sometime here. But I'm here. Pay attention.
All right, great. All right. The time is here. So going on, I think we are going to commence the program officially. Hi, everyone. Welcome to this section once again, our monthly section. It's a pleasure to welcome you here. This is a monthly section by the NAIJA-JUG user group. So here again, we have in the house a very renowned software engineer by the name Mr. Jether Rodrigues. Is here in our midst today. He has other titles. You can call him a senior software engineer. You can call him an architect. That's what he is. He's a very notable person when it comes to the Java ecosystem, and he has done a lot of great things. If you might also know, he's one of the major pioneers of OpenJ proxy. Yeah, he's one of the, in fact, he's the very first OJP champion we have in the OpenJ proxy. So he's one of the people who is making the life of database a renowned one. So I must appreciate his presence here today. Today he has a very special thing for us, a very special topic, building REST APIs with SpringBoot, of course. So I know he's, as a Java developer, anytime you hear something Spring Boot, sure, your ears will definitely want to kind of pick it, right? So that's what he have for us today. Moving on, I would also like to acknowledge our sponsor, that is JetBrains, for what they have been doing. They have been a backbone supporting us in what we are doing in the way possible that they can, and we do appreciate that. So we send our greetings to JetBrains, and we appreciate what we are doing. So moving on, I will welcome everyone once again. And at this point, without taking much of our time, I would like to hand over the section to Mr. Rodrigues to take the floor at this point.
Oh, nice. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Victor and Samuel, by the invite for me. It will be my first international presentation, so if I made some mistake here, be patient with me. First of all, I met Victor, as Victor mentioned, working on OpenG prox, open source pro. So it has been a very interesting project that we are working on. We are learning a lot with the founder. Rogério, and all the community. It's so important to work in the open source project that it's possible to learn a lot. So, I'm very glad to be here again, and I hope, just to see if I'm presenting, yeah. I hope that in our few minutes here that we have, walking through about the idea to create and design good and robust RESTful APIs. In this case, using our framework that we like a lot, SpringBoot. But today, it will be not a very coding session in this case. We will have a snippet code here, but we will try to talk about those three topics here: REST, architectural style, API design patterns, and production ready code here. Okay. As Victor mentioned, I'm Jether Rodrigues. I'm a software backend engineer currently working in a digital bank. It's been over almost 7 years, and we are creating a robust distributed system for financial domains there. And I'm passionate about clean architecture, domain-driven design, and developer community. This is the time I'm here with you. This is my LinkedIn. I will share with Victor after this presentation, so everyone can keep talking with me, connect with me there in LinkedIn to discuss, send me a message or question, whatever. We will. I will be very happy to help and learn with you, of course. I'm also a husband and father. It's very important. Let's go. Yeah. Oh, sorry, Victor.
No problems. We are together.
Oh, nice. I was thinking that there is a raise our hand, but I'm not. So we will start here talking about a term that is very important for us, because every time we were tasked with creating application APIs, we just start coding every time. Just have a question with or gathering resources with our product owners about the business rules like that, and start coding. But it's very important to know that RESTful APIs, it is an implementation of a base. There is a term that here like REST. REST, it is a architectural style that stands for representational state transfer. Roy Fielding wrote in his PhD dissertation in 2000. It is not REST. It is not a protocol. It is not a JSON over HTTP. That it is a guide that it's possible to implement RESTful APIs based on their it is on his set of constraints that we will see here. It is interesting to understand that before we have RESTful APIs, we have we need to attend the guide of REST and its constraints to be possible to have robust APIs, scalable, loose coupled, and network applications. The 6 constraints that REST give us, it is about client server. Client server is a separation of concerns. We have a client, we have a service, and this means that it's possible to evolve our client UI independently from the backend server in this case, and enables portability across platforms. Stateless, we always heard about, oh, stateless, but stateless, client server, cacheable, it is all a constraint from the REST, not from the RESTful APIs, okay? Stateless, each request carries all of the context needed. No server-side session, like in the past, PHP stick session and other. It is a stateless. It is a constraint for REST. Cacheable, it's very important. We always need to cache something, so it is a constraint for to implement in a RESTful APIs. It is a response self-identity as cacheable or not. We will see some headers that it's possible to use e-tags for cache control, like max age, others headers that is possible to use. We will see. The uniform interface here, the resource identification URI, exactly they specifically address that it's possible to achieve and the request specifically in that API. We will see what is HTOS. It's very interesting. The fifth, in this case, it's a client can a layered system here. Client can tell if connected to underserved intermediary. We have some example here about we have a client that are requesting to our service in the other side, but there is a CDN in the middle of that you gate serve or an API gateway, a gateway that it's help us to aggregate or transform some responses, but it's the because of that we are achieving the layered system. The last one, it is optional for us when we are implementing RESTful APIs. So it is the name. It is code on demand. This one service can extend client functionality, transferring executable code, like in a browser that we have in engine that it serves something or some code during the transferring. But for us that are building RESTful APIs, we do not use this one. So the other 5, it's so important for us. A point here. Until now, we have here the definition of REST. It is an architectural style. The 6 constraints that this REST architectural style has, and in this case, with that, it's possible to start to see about the implementation of that. Again, REST is not a protocol. It is not about JSON. It is a way that our www representing when we are transferring data between the point A to B, or client and server. Why API matter in this case? API, it is a backbone for every modern distributed system. They are no longer just an integration layer. They are a product, and give a concrete example here. As I mentioned before, I'm working at this domain here on a financial APIs. I'm working in a banking, but here we have some example that those are example here have robust APIs designing. It's very important to every domain that we are working on. Stripe, PayPal, Pix. There is an example here about the Brazilian instant payment. Pix, it is for us, Brazil. Oh, sorry, I don't know, I forget mention, but I live in Brazil. I'm a Brazilian, and here we have a payment processing called Pix. It's so important, and Pix API is one of the most important for us in our payment domain here in Brazil, and even USA came here to Brazil to understand how we build Pix and our robust API here. And every API it is important in a banking as a service, open banking, with RESTful implementation contracts enable fintech innovation here. We have a lot of fintech in Brazil also. Other example here, messaging and notification. We all know Twilio, SendGrid, Firebase. Always, it is these asynchronously integrate with our SMS, email, and push notification integration API. It's very important. There are those companies have very clear documentation for us, following all of the constraints that I mentioned before. Also, I will mention healthcare after, but we also have cloud infrastructure, IoT mobility. Brazil, the Brazilians like somewhat or use a lot Uber in a way to use here our mobility transportation. So this is a good example here. Imagine you request a lot every time that I'm riding in a car. It's very important to have a robust API and follow the statements. Of course, e-commerce and marketplace example here. There is, in this case here, healthcare and insurance. It is an important domain here because we are talking about patient exchange data between hospital, labs, and other healthcare or health business. And it's very important to create a robust APIs following the statement. But here, we are using the end. In the end of this presentation, we are talking about security. So this is very important here. This case has a word here. HAST is the protocol. It's wrong. I have a mistake here. I made a mistake. It is not HAST is a protocol. HAST is the way to implement, and RESTful is the implementation over HTTP. Okay. Moving forward here, when we are implementing our API, it's very important. In the beginning, we talked about REST, about what is the constraint, the importance of robust APIs here. And now we are entering in a REST foundations to start to modeling our API, REST in this case. We will get in our code the RESTful API implementation based on every pattern that we will follow here. In this case, I get this this idea from the domain module. There is a book in the end of this presentation, have the reference. But that book is APIs and patterns. It is an amazing book. I read and I'm reading again to learn it again and again. We have here 4 domain that it's so important to follow. And for each one, we will see exactly what means and what it needs to do to have a robust API here. We are talking about the endpoint, the URI address, the way that I identify the resource in the system, the operations, we will see, the implementation for all of the verbs, the HTTP verbs in this case, get, post, put, delete, and pat. Here is a message. Yeah. Oh, it is a message in the request or a message in the response. We have headers and a body request, or we have headers and a body response. And then we needed to have a good contract. It's very important that for the good contract, we have some specs that it's possible to use. In this case, I mentioned open API. Versioning, it's very important. Have all of our APIs in a versioning and have SLAs. It's very important also. Moving forward with example here, just to represent that idea, I put here some example. We have here the endpoint URI that I'm talking about, the product resource. We represent here the operation, HTTP verb operation with get mapping. And the probably here I'm receiving, let's see, there is no body request here, just a body response that we will answer when I find all the product response here, but it's just in a representational API. It's very important to keep our controller based on REST controller, because with that it's possible to use that get mapping and get and post and other that you handle above on procs, that it's possible to mention and do some other things. It's very important. Now we will see the first module that is about endpoint here. It is about the design rules for URI. There is a URI template here, RFC, everything it's based on a specification. So it's so important to pay attention on that. When we are doing good and we are implementing very well our API, we are following the request specifications. It's so important. In this case, there is some rules. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, just a quick one. Sorry, just a quick one. I wanted to know if you will be willing to entertain questions as you go, or we leave all questions towards the end of the program.
I think in the end of probably I.
Okay, great, fine. Okay, so guys, if you have a question, just note it down and be sure that he will answer you towards the end of the section. Okay, so yeah. You can carry on, Mr. Jether.
Yeah, sure. Okay, and now as we are entering in the designs here, we have in a rule book here. I will mention before the specifically book also. It's interesting to read also. Here we have some rules to follow. when you are implementing, it's very important to use the slashes. It, in this case, avoid the trailing slashes, like here at, for example, API version 1 slash products slash. It's not good for us. Underscore must not be used. Lowercase letters preferring the paths. It's so important to use everything following an Eastern standards, and is highly recommended. And the REST API must be driven a hypertext. We will see in the future, but it's here. It's the way to design the URI. For our, we have an application that it's possible to have a resource like together resource like a product, catalog, inventory, like that. All of them, it's necessary to follow the same. If you are using a plural, that it's very recommended. So everyone must be using in a plural, not one in a singular, another resource in a plural. No, it's must recommended to use using a standard here. Okay, in the next, we have the resource archetypes. The resource archetypes in this case, when we are just creating and implementing, it's very easy for us to understand. But every time we are talking about RESTful APIs implementation, we are talking about resource archetypes also. We have in a document that represents each line in our role. Like I'm getting a user ID specifically, so I have in a document that will respond to my client consumer, or in this case, based on that order ID, give me the invoice. So we have a representation of that document here. A collection, it is about our resource by itself. And under the collection, we have a lot of representation of our document here. The store, it is for resource models. They store in here in the way that a client manage a repository, and the client sign the URI based on our documentation for our API here. And we have the idea to put our pet. Here, it's interesting to add pet again, also, because we are choosing to exchange or update or keep my resource posted with some new information. And the controller, in the end of, it's possible to execute some action, like in this case, the API are is canceling some order, passing the order ID, or we found some payment that that happened in the past. We are using here post, just a code here. We are using post here to trigger some action, but it is just triggering an action that it will happen under some specific resource. It will not create a new resource. Post is used to trigger an action, but it is most common. It's used for create a new resource in this case. Okay, for the endpoints rules, using that URI design patterns here, like I mentioned here, trigger action. It is the idea when I processing resource, triggering action, computation, or workflow. It's also possible use post when I, like I mentioned, starting triggering an action, or I wanna, oh, give me the shipment calculation. It is also use post. It's okay. It's not a problem for our design APIs here. Information holder, that's where is I store domain data. There is a subtypes here, the operation, master, and lookup. We will see in the filter. And data transfer here. We could implement an API that's possible to be used for a batch operation. But here, it's very important to pay attention in your domain, because depends on the way that you are implementing that the API could be strange, not strange, but could have some problem, performance problem or another. So you just pay attention here. It's possible, but pay attention. We have here another, let's see, just, yeah. We have here the idea again, I snipped code that it's possible of code to represent that the situation I mentioned, using post here to trigger an action that you occur with my order service here. In general, it's very important to pay attention here and make your API asynchronous. But here I'm just exemplifying the idea of the triggering action to attend the module, API module. And the other operation that we have, again, with get operations and versioning and the resource in the plural, all of them in this case here. The URI best practice. It's very important. Do not use, when we are talking about REST, we have, I will just change my tab here just to show that the maturity module from Martin Fowler, we have here level 0, level 1, level 2, level 3. The idea here, we are walking through the patterns, modeling, to achieve the level 3. When you, it's very important to pay attention, and I will send this article also. It's very important to pay attention what we are implementing to try to achieve the level 3, the glory of REST in this case. Here, when we are talking best design APIs, never use the verb and in the URI. So here at my left side here, all of those example adjacent patterns. In a professional ways and a professional pattern that we most follow here, it is about very well defined for every HTTP verb, just in the representation of RESTful APIs. The lower case with hyphens, if necessary to have a situation like that, user and accounts, hyphen accounts, or user hyphen settings, okay, like that. But if you have a user's resource representation, it's interesting to use an ID here and get these specifically user accounts or get the specifically user settings. But it's possible use like that also. not an underscore. I'm just exemplifying the idea to use hyphens. The get representation for one specifically document that represents a specific line in my database. We are talking after, but here it's the idea to send the content negotiation. In this case, I'm telling to my API that, oh, I will accept your response as an application JSON if my RESTful API it's able to produce that the response in application JSON. In this case, you be produce it, and my client you interpret that and show to the users. And in this case, as I mentioned before, there is no trailing slash here. It's just API version and the resource in the Pluto and done. Is the global mapping in this case here. Nice. I'm just walking through very quickly because of the time, but you will see. I will send, as I mentioned, I will send the presentation, and you can see after better. Read and read again. There is no problem here. Here, I'm just mention the HTTP verbs in this case, all of them, and which one is dependent, safe, and expected response here. We have the only one here that it's very, it is safe and dependent for us is the get. The idea to be independent is every time I request some resource for you, you will always answer for me without any update or transformation in our database in relation with that resource. In this case, get, every time it will be independent and safe, and every time we will use the response entity with OK HTTP status codes and plus the body response in this case. Post, it is the one in this case. I'm talking about post when we are creating a resource. So in this case, it is non-independent and is not safe because every time I call the post, something will be created. So it's very important to pay attention and have that concern when you are implementing your API to prevent that situation in your domain, the duplication. We will talk after. Here it is the but. Okay. But it is a full replacement of resource. You have a person, and when you put the data, you will replace all of the information. It is independent. It's considered here independent because we will just update the specifically resource by an ID. But it's not safe because you are replacing the previous information that the resource had. And also here, it's possible to use the 200 OK status. Also, it's possible to use 200 or 202 accepted status in this case. In fact, it's very important also because sometimes we need just to change the status on other specifically property from our resource. Because of that, a patch it's for partial update in our resource state. It is also non-independent and it is not safe here. Now, delete of every. Of course, delete is considered independent because when you delete and a resource, it is once, it will be deleted once. And in the other request, there is no anymore that resource. So, okay, but it's not safe because you are, again, changing your data. Head here is just to get without body, just to use in metadata only. It's very important to see when we are using some application, and we can see that occurring when we opened our developer networks tab in our browser. It is possible to see every triggering, every call in our API, and every head and options also occur in there. If mainly when we have a negotiation for the cores, it's we will see a lot of options transferring data to available methods here to amplify it with the with cores in this case. Okay. After that, now what are the responsibility from all of them, all of our operation? We have operation for to create a resource, to get resource, to update resource. So we have a responsibility. It is the patterns also. Okay. In this case, we have post. As I mentioned, I'm just repeating, but it is a pattern to follow. Every time I will create post, it is correct one. Every time I will trigger an action post, it's when I say correct, it is because I'm following the patterns. Okay, it is important to follow the parts every time. So here again, I'm creating or I'm triggering some information. Retrieving, every time we will use get. Okay, just it's better. And computation, like I mentioned before, when I'm triggering or having some computation here, it's possible also use post. And just to have an operation to transit the state of my resource, we can use put or pat in this case. It is there those operations, it is about the responsibility patterns here. It is just, again, I just have, oh my gosh. But yeah, we have here an example that we have a get, a post, a put, and a delete map. Everyone responsible for to specifically do exactly an operation, okay? Not beyond that. We are starting talking about how can I be or make my API safe. Even I have an API, I have an entry point. I do not want to send it to my business logic incorrect data. We in this case we will talking about a data transfer object here. When I parse here in the beginning, I need to parse correctly. Okay, so as we are using Spring Boot 3 with last version, not the last version, but a new version of Java, we have here Jakarta validation. Formerly, it was Javax validation, okay? But yeah, it is all about the Beam validation in this case, that it's very important to have in our body request, our message body request. That's so important to validate everything. In this case, when we are using not blank, we are pay attention and with no blank, it's very no input. It's very important that the name uh, follow that constraint. The name must be between 3 and max 100. And I have a message. We will see in the future that presentation when that message matters. Okay. And we have others notations here. Not to know for the price. We have here in a constraint that price must be greater than 0. So at least must be O1. And no for UI. This one is very important. We have here a no input because we must have tags. And if we have tags in that list, in that list, when my my REST controller or the MVC, SpringBoot MVC, are working with parsing of my object in flight, every tags inside that list it will be validated with a not blank. If you want get an error, I will return an error bad request to my client in this case. We will see in the future. So here it's just an example to validate everything in our message that we will see in the future here. Like I mentioned, we are using here in this presentation Spring MVC architecture. There is another way. Yes, there is. But here for today, we are talking about Spring MVC that from the request to the database, we have that life cycle here. We have the request, we have a filter chain. There are in this case a lot of filter that's possible to have. Mainly if we are talking about security, and another, it's possible to create filter and filter. Of course, it's very necessary to pay attention because the filters will intercept every request and run every time that the implementations. So depends on the idea to have for performance. It's very important to pay attention with filter chain here. Dispatcher servlet. It's we do not interact directly with dispatcher servlets in this case. It is how Spring deal with our request and route every request to specifically URI endpoint. Because of that, it's so important to design very clear URI address. So dispatcher servlet, you route to there. So in this case, when we route to some endpoint, we will activate the controller. And in this case, you are using REST controller here. Of course, we will execute some business logic using our service use cases or domain layer here to execute some business logic and other. Our repository layer, that is the way that we access data in your database. And of course, our database here. For all of those layers, is very important to pay attention with the implementations here. I'm talking about that because it is about our Spring Boot, that the way Spring Boot deals with the request when we are talking about MVC architecture. The most common HTTP request, HTTP status code, we have a representation here for each one. Okay, we have the when to use, we have the category here, the code specifically, and when using Spring Boot, it's possible to achieve that. Okay, it's so easy. Every time our Spring Boot REST API, every time it's so important, use response entity, because when we are responding with response entity here, it's possible to use correctly the headers and the message response. So we will, in this case, achieve the correct modeling. We will see in the future here, the message modeling here. So response entity, okay, for 200, and create a URI when you will respond with 201, and a lot of here. Here it's very important, malformed requests. We will answer with bad requests, because these annotation here, we have an annotation that we will see that is a body request, and in front of the body request, it's possible to use the valid. It's very important to use with that with these annotations here to validate our object request. Of course, we have a Spring Security intercepting every request, and if possible, if not possible to authenticate here, we will return an 400 with invalid authentication, or authenticate but not authorized. We will see in the future. And the other, it is very important, 409, when we have a problem with idempotency request. So if I will talk after, but just the idea, when I also received a request that I receive again when I'm a idempotent endpoint or implementation, I will return with conflict status code here, because I already executed that in the past. And okay, we have some other here that it's a server exceptions. We will never return to the client the entire state trace, but we will see here nice specification that it's possible use with Spring Boot to just return a friendly error message. It's very important to us. Okay, moving forward. Here is the specification that I mentioned. Where can I use that? Let's see. Yeah. When I will return errors for the beginning of the 400 until 503, it is all a kind of errors here. In this case, Spring Boot gives us an natively problem details message implementation. This follow the RFC 9457. So this is the way that my problem is represented every time. So it's so friendly. And every time my client that I requesting and receiving a response, you see the same time. There is no um, there is no need to interpret with regex or other. Just create an GTO there in the client and receive the standard message here. The standard message always have a type, a title, a status, a detail, the instance, the timestamp, and a list of errors in this case. So it's so important. We will see how can we enable that, okay? Nice. This it will be again, it's not so again, just I know that it's this is very small, but in the future we will see the complete code when I send. But here I'm exemplifying how can I create a global exception handler. It is possible to create for the method argument not valid exception. That is when I have some bad request validation when Jakarta give me the errors. So this is the exception that you throw, and I can have here the response entity with problem detail that it's a native from the Spring, and I will answer correctly. Every response we have here has the correctly representation to return to our client. I like the way that we have a global exception handler to deal with the custom, or not the custom, but the normal exception that we have from the Spring. And for our exception that, like example here, resource not found exception, views and rules exception, we could create our domain exception handler just to keep separated the natural exception from the Spring from our exception handling. Okay, but it's just an idea. Okay, moving forward. Here, now it's possible to increase the size. Nice. That's the representation that I have there in the previous slide. I mentioned about resource not found exception and duplicate resource exception in this case. It is they are exception that it's for our live in our domain business logic here or layer here. My service will throw those exceptions in some time, and we will catch this. But with problem detail message, doesn't matter. I do not need pay attention or worry about, oh, I need to handle this message like that or other message like the other way. No, we just have an exception handling, and we will always return a problem detailment. It's the pattern. It's natively supported by our Spring Boot, and it is very important because follow the RFC. It is an industry pattern. Okay. This one just other representation for our problem details, and it is the way that we can enable the problem detail natively. Okay, Spring MVC from detail enable true, done. And we just have just implementing a global exception handling that that you create for us the problem detail for here. Here there is an example, kind of, I think, poor in this case here, but yeah, it's the way that it's possible to uh, we have a response entity with status that it is 409, and my media type, my content negotiation for the header, response header, my body that you be created, my body detail in that following that message here. We will have some message like that, but it's better when you have a global exception handling, because you have, the unique place every problem, and you don't care to multiply the implementations. Okay, it's very important. It's uh here I'm talking about headers and metadata. In this case, for content type, accept, authorization, e-tag, cache control. They are headers from the request or for the body response. Example here, the content type, it's the type I'm receiving in my body request. Accept the type that it will produce. Example. And authorization in our head that it's every time we are talking about stateless API, we will receive the bear token like when we are talking JWT token in this case. E-tag, cache control, location. This one, it's very important. X request ID. It's very important for us because we would like to use that in our logging to trace from the beginning to the end of the request. Sometimes when we are talking about microservice architecture, it's possible our service to integrate in another. So my client will request for me, and I will integrate in the other. So I will trace the entire request from the beginning to the end until receiving the response with an application that it's possible to aggregate our logs. It will be possible to see the trace, the entire trace in that platform that we are aggregating logs. So it's very important to see. And this header, it will help you when you are debugging a problem that probably you are going to have in the future, and or probably you already had. Okay, I I mentioned all of them until now. All of them represent the idea for a message. Okay, until now about data, metadata, link element, ID element. Every time we have here a message that in a body request, in a response, depends on the way that you are using here. It's so important because each one represent, each one elevate your response or your message to another level. In this case, it's possible return some metadata like a created at, updated at version, something time like that. ID element here, it's so important when we are talking talking about ID, because when we have now auto increment in our database, we preferred in this case UUID, but I like most the ULID. I will send an example after. But it's in this case, when we are using LUID or ULID or UUID, there is no worries about the database auto incrementation. Okay, it's your application carrying with worrying about the new ID when you are creating a new resource. So there is no worry in your database with the auto increment. Some sequence like that. Okay, the link elements here. We will see an example about the HOS discoverability. Okay. Just an example, other example here about I mentioned about the response in this case. In this case, every message representation, it is here. The metadata about created and updated, the document, the element data normally, the UID, we have some JSON like that. About data, there is an RFC also to that give us the way that we needed to use to represent our data, because it's necessary to worry or have a concern. How can we parse the data to keep the time zone? It's very important with that. When we are working globally, the data it's coming from every time zone. Okay, here is the idea to have an HOAS is the last level. It's so it is not so easy to implement that, but it's possible. Okay, we have this implementation. It's necessary to here's the example, but with that we will have something. Let me increase the size if possible. Oh, I increase, but there is no response. No. Okay, but we have here the message with a status total. Okay, but we have the other links that is possible to access that specifically resources from that resource I'm calling. So because of that, was mentioned about discoverability, okay, with HOS. Again, here, more specifically, we are talking about content negotiation and media types. I think everyone, you all, when are implementing, you are not concerning about the just put concern about the consumers or producers, because when we are using REST controller annotation, we just put our get mapping or post mapping, depends on the HTTP verb operation that we are achieving or implementing here. And the common, it will be use the application JSON value for consume and application JSON value for the producers. Is the common. It's normal when we are using REST controller annotation. But if you wanna to have a version that it's possible to deliver XML, it will be possible. It will be possible in this case. It's possible. I feel I would like to have here another version of my find by ID and my representation when the Spring parse the return to my client, it's possible to produce XML. what is necessary to do? Just changing my media type when I'm producing the answer. Just having another method here with media type XML value. And I just changed the end of my version 1 here, which should be in a version 2, plus XML. Done. My RESTful APIs has been responding using JSON or XML, just working with media types and content negotiation in this case when we are consuming. My client sent me that idea in a header accept here. The product view view 1 in this case, and giving me the answer in the I'm using here the version 1, and I'm asking you for JSON. Done. If I'm not matching with that representation, the natural status to respond will be 406, not acceptable. It's very important to pay attention with that. Okay. Pass to the next. Embeddable entity and the linked information. This one, it is when we are talking, or we need to pay attention what how my entity behavior between their datas. Okay, when I use embeddable, when data is always consumed together and it's not so long, in this case I will reduce probably you all have a problem or had a problem with any carry n carry plus 1 in a database using JPA. So here it is also a problem when we have n or a plus 1 network round trips. Using embeddable prevent that situation. Okay. As I mentioned, the entity is small. It's so short to response. We do not have a large response here. And the cardinality relationship is low. But when the opposite occur, we have a large or deeply nested entity. We have an order that has a customer that belongs to the product, blah, 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 and we have a large or deeply nested entity. So we will just use a link. We will just have here the way that, here's the order. Now you can request to see the customer. You can request to see all the items that are related in this order, so on. And the client may not need all of the important information, just need, now I just wanted to see the order ID with, I don't know, the status. Okay. And here, it's so important because this one, when we are using embeddable, cache, this one, it will be complicated. It is it's okay to do, but we have a concern in here that every time I update the resource alongside that API here, it's necessary to pay attention with that. Here, there is no that concern because we are independently here caching and versioning, because we have here the other resource to achieve, the other resource to request the information. Okay. And yeah, I think this one is very important to pay attention with that and have no concerns. Here more about the HTTP caching headers response. when I'm caching information, those headers also is from the API design patterns. We have cache control with max age, with no cache, no store, private. Private, it's very interesting because when I return cache control private, only browser cache it. Not this cache is not shared with CDN or proxies. It's important when we are using sensitive data, for example, here. We have a set, an authorization header also, and mainly we cache when we are using GET, an operation, a HTTP operation using GET, and the response should include caching metadata. We will see an example here. Okay, here it's just an example that when I get some resource and I have a conditional, it's very interesting because we have a 200 OK response here, and we tag that response. And when my client requests an again, but send to my endpoint, my API, a non-match with that tag, I will just answer directly with 304 not modified. Just that. And there is no way, there is no need to go through the business logic, hit the database if there is no cache, like that. And the other here, it's to prevent some problem with when I'm using put operation, prevent some problem with a concurrent request that race condition like that, and we have an optimistic locking here when we are using put or delete. Pet also. Okay. Oh my gosh, it is. Here, just example that use cache. Okay, there is a cacheable when I'm finding, but when I'm updating or deleting some resource, I just put or evict that cache. In this case, I will prevent the eventual inconsistent data. Okay, it is almost there, Victor. I'm doing. It is also almost there. When we are working with HTTP caching with e-tags, it's possible to use some features, a filter there, and I will use that filter here, putting e-tag in our response entity. Here is the example that it's possible to use cache control to put in my response headers the cache control headers. Okay, moving forward with pagination strategy. It's so important. I think all of you all probably work with pagination in some moment, and the most common used here is the offset based. We are talking about our famous pageable default request here with size, page, sorting by some properties like that example here. But there is other, like the cursor based is efficient. So there are 3 ways here to have an pagination, but all of them, there is a mount specifically to use that. Choose wisely when offset when you are talking about admin dashboard or your API. It's not about a mobile or high volume streams here. Cursor when we are talking when we are requesting from the mobile infinity scroll. It's possible when we are using backend for front-end pattern in a BFF. It's possible to have a composition for mobile API, desktop client, and other type of client. So, and then we have a key set. Key set is based on the last thing that I return. So it's so important when we have a high volume event string in this case. Okay, it's the idea to have a pattern that pagination part gave us with strategies. Just an example here, pageable default, here other default with other searching our elements in our database. Here, it's so important, as I mentioned before. You do not talk a lot about, but idempotency, it's very important. It's possible to receive from the client the idempotency key, and we will intercept with that idempotency key, evaluating our database or cache. If I also previously handle that idempotency key, and I will just return the response saying, "Oh, I already did that in the past, so there is no way to do again." This will prevent for you a critical situation when we are talking about payments, order creation, money transfers like that. Okay. Here is just an example that I put here about independence interceptor. Every request, it will be intercepted when we are using that interceptor. This situation will in this case, it will prevent you to have a problem with independence situation. Here, for a way to have a versioning APIs, we have URI path that's so common for us. Simple, visible, cacheable, routable. We always see in every time. The one that it's so hard to see, it's when we are version via carry param, but it's possible to do that. Now, custom header, it's very smoothly here, but yeah, there is a header that you pass, and my implementation will identify the version you will try to answer. And the last one here, I showed the example before, that it's using the accept header. It is the example with versioning. Okay. Let's see. And move forward to the end here. It is about API security fundamentals. Always, it's necessary to have an authentication. Once you are authenticated, you are not authorized to access every endpoint API. You will access only the endpoint that your role make possible to achieve. We count these authorizations. So we have the authentication and the authorization to use that. We have rate limiting. It's very important here, but it's possible you implement that in your services, but rate limiting, it's better, in my opinion, it's better using the API gateway. When your CGN, your API gateway, you limit the requests a lot in your application. Every time it is a concern very important for us here, to have the encryptation from the beginning to the end of the request. So we are talking about the HTTP security layer here, to encrypt our data in a transferring from the A to B point, validate all the input here using Jacquard in this case, and as I mentioned before, having the auditability and observability here with structure log, anomaly detection, and on access log, and using our famous X request ID header to have the traceability from the beginning to the end of the request. Here is an example here that it's possible to authenticate and authorize the use of the that specifically. Like example, we access, we have, we are authenticated, but only administrator has the power to delete that the representation of product in the database. Here, an example of rate limiting. I will not enter in the details. The life cycle patterns for our API. It is all we are always we have always here for let's say that we have 4 stage of our API lifecycle: the experimental, the published, and deprecated, and the retired. It's very important because we could document our APIs, we could version that, and we could have a policy that, in some time by now we will deprecate it, and you'll be deprecated, and in the date X we will retire our API. So with that, my client, you concern or you worry about that, and you implement the other version to use with that. I will just show here an idea that it's possible to have. Here, I don't know if everyone knows, but this is a Swagger hub that I used to implement some APIs. But this is only the documentation. Here, it's possible to walk through all of this stage that I mentioned before, and it's possible to keep version it. My clients, you see, you have the location resource or the locations resource in here. From the location service, you have the weather service that it have a resource forecasts. You have a product from the weather service here. Also, all of the product related with weather in this case. Everything is mapped. Everything there is the description. Everything here there is your HTTP verb correctly. The response message to describe. When I have some situation that it's possible to notice the advice about my deprecation or the retirement, we can use the info tag servers. It's the idea. It's very interesting to use an open API because it's a specification that it's possible just to import the YAML here, and we will see friendly your documentation, API documentation. It's very interesting. Okay, I also show the example there, but this is the implementation that you when you start your application, you will be able to download your YAML when you access the Swagger endpoint. Open API annotations, that is very important. Sometimes I prefer to create an interface that my controller implements that, because in that interface, I put all of the open API implementations, or it's interesting to use the open API generator that is based on our REST controller, message, GTOs, HTTP verbs, like that. Will generate automatically in a real time, in a runtime mode, the documentation. Sometimes it's necessary to have more details to have a rich documentation. It's very important. Closing, and just to have a checklist that we see here. We talked about the URI design, the validation, HTTP method, error handling is very important. Don't forget error handling is very important for us. Security, evolution, documentation, and performance. As we can see, we use our SpringBoot from walkthrough in the entire layer that's possible with the architecture and MVC in this case. The reference that I used, the books and the online articles are RFCs and other. And oh, finally, sorry about the time, but finally, thank you for all.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mr. Jether, for your wonderful presentation. It's been awesome. At this point, we'll be opening room for questions. Guys, I hope you have a lot of questions written down, because I think we'll have the time. And Mr. Jether is also willing and ready to answer your questions. So please, if you do have a question, just can kindly raise your hand, and then we'll call you in to speak. Any questions from
If you do
our
not
audience?
have, oh, sorry. If you do not have so many questions now, but in the future, everyone should keep touch with me in the LinkedIn. We could talk about having a conversation. I'm willing to help everyone and learning, yeah, of course, with everyone also.
All right. In that sense of while still waiting for question, me personally, I have a question. So, Mr. Jether, like, I wanted to know, like, the production approach that you follow when versioning your REST API to ensure that you did not disrupt the existing client.
Oh, if I understood correctly, you are asking me about what the approach I'm using. That's correct?
Yes. When versioning
Oh,
your API in order to disrupt the already existing client.
okay. The approach here and my current work, the approach that we are using is following the following all of the specification that I mentioned about the versioning. We have for all of our services the documentation of the documentation of the APIs, following the RFCs for our plumbing details or error handling, our HTTP verbs like that every time it is necessary to pay attention if not only with the green is the green case, but the non-HAP path also. So we are trying to every time to pay attention with our documentation, our approach to achieve the glory REST with at least in the level 2. When we talked about the level 2 here, the only that we are not achieving here, it's about the HOS, but in all of the other constraints, patterns, and other that I mentioned, we are concerning about. And we have a lot of integrations with a lot of partners, even internal partners and external partners also. We keep our APIs versioning because we have a policy that when we created a new version, we created a documentation also, and we have a kind of external documentation for our external client or customer or partner in this case, and we send an email message with some pattern for a bank, and we describe what the motivation, why we are improving or evolving our API and our version, because sometimes we need to attend a rigor a law from the Central Bank of Brazil. And in the way that we mentioned, every time the situation or the API is ending in your deprecation policy, we'll again devise all of our customer or partner, and when finish the time that we will retire the old version, we just having a flag that disable that API, and now we only have the new version online and working for us.
Great. Thank you very much for that answer that you have just given. I think it's made it clearer for me now. Thank you very much for that. Also, I still have a couple of questions for you, but let me give this one now. I wanted to know your approaches to testing Spring Boot REST API.
Very interesting. Unfortunately, I don't mention here, but currently I'm using two. Let's think here. Two ways to have that test internally in my own application using hash assured or mock white mock to test my contracts, my integrations, trying to mock the entire end-to-end, but inside my application. Outside of the application, we are using, I don't know if you know, the robot framework in the CI/CD pipeline. So in this case, we have a step that it's possible to have our application and the robot framework that requests as a client, and that the robot application has the entire body request the headers to request, and has the specifically mocked for the response headers and the response data. So that the robot requests to my application, and my application must return that contract with the robot. In this case, we could, every time that we are merging our feature or feature branch, or but in release mode, we will see that, oh, my step internally of my application to integration test, unit test, strength test, it's okay. But and externally, my robot pass also. And outside of the CI/CD pipeline, we also have an additional step, the QA, the quality assurance person that it's make requests to test the entire feature from end to end. And we have an we are using Jira, and in the Jira, it's possible to create test execution items, and must be attend that the request every time. So the quality assurance will be responsible for to do that for us. And now we have here the certain that, oh, now I have a release version of my application with the success in all of the tests that we had. It's not easy to achieve that approach, but it's the way that we are doing.
Wow. Okay. Great. 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 Thank you so much. I love the way you give context to your answers. You don't just answer, but you also give context. So that context alone matters a lot to me. So I really appreciate that answer. From my audience, do you have any questions for him? Anyone? Okay, okay. If there's none, then I might be asking my last question. My very last question is, okay, when building out a SpringBoot application, assuming you are starting out with monolith, you are starting out with monolith, and eventually as your application grow, you might, as the requirement and your services grow, you might want to like split it into different services. Now, questions come in like, when you are starting out this application as a monolith project, what should you have in mind? Like when you are designing the REST APIs, what should you put in place to make it seamless when you want to now break out your services?
Interesting. Yeah, interesting. Even your application is a monolith, from the beginning, it's very interesting. You start implementing your code and your feature based on a domain. Currently, or nowadays, it's easier because we have here Spring Monolith to help us with that. We will keep our domain or subdomain separatedly from the others inside the same application. But without Spring Monolith, the idea is to your concern, it's the same. Every time you are creating an API, you will gather all of the requirements with your product owner, or else and you must keep your resource, your domain, and your infrastructure layer separately from the others every time. When we are talking a product, for example, here, or for instance, we will concern or worry only about the product resource or domain entity here. So it's possible to have separatedly the application layer for product, the domain layer for product, the infrastructure layer for product. And with that, when you see, oh my gosh, it's time to start thinking and break down my monolith here. It is easy for you think where you start doing that. You start doing that in the place that you have a very clear path. You are following very clear path here. As I mentioned, the product. Oh my gosh, the product here. I am clear seeing that it's possible to break in a product service because we clearly see the production layer for the application, the business logic, the infrastructure. So you break down that. And you could see the database also, and you will break everything for them. There is a problem here. You will break your monolith, you will create a product service, a new product service. So your new concern now is how can I route my request for the new APIs that I create. So you will choose the idea that our microservice architectural pattern for Strangler microservice give us the idea to out not all, but incrementally to the new product, the new request. So that's my idea when I'm trying to break my monolith into small microservices with a specifically responsive response.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Jita. I really appreciate this time. I also appreciate the way you kind of giving your time to answer the question and throw context at it, not just answering it, but give some clear context. So I do really appreciate that. And from my audience, you still have a chance to ask a question if you may have one, but if there's none, I think I've exhausted my, okay, go ahead.
Hi, everyone. I don't have a question. I just wanted to say thank our speaker. So it's an insightful section. I really learned a lot, and I hope to put all of them into practice. Thank you so much.
Okay, nice.
Wow, thank you so much for that comment, Ms. Gloria. Sorry, Nina, to say thank you for that comment. To be honest, this section is a good for anyone who uses Spring Boot, whether at beginner level, at senior level. It just covers everything. Most of the questions I wanted to ask was already covered. So with that said, we are almost very close to the end of the section. If you are joining us for the very first time, this is NAIJA-JUG user group, right? Today happens to be our monthly section, which we take. This is a once a month monthly section. So today we have the person presenting here today is Mr. Jether Rodrigues. He's a renowned software engineer with so many experiences, and also you can call him the OJP champion. If you know of OJP, an open source program, is the very first champion of the open source program. So with that said, if you want to also know more about that program, he's handling the OJP stuff. He can give you more instance of that, or may want to say something on that. I don't know, Mr. Jether, do you want to say something on that?
No, it's very well. Yeah. Additionally, we are looking forward to community to a collaborator to help us with the evolving of OGP. It will be a pleasure to have all of you there helping me and Victor and the founder of OGP. And I really appreciate your invite, Victor, to be here. I'm glad to be here. You send the slides to you to share with the community. Again, if anyone wanted to send me a message in the LinkedIn, yeah, do that. We will talk. We will chat there. We will have WhatsApp exchange message and learn together. Let's go. We are here to help and be helped for the community. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. Thank you so much for that awesome opportunity to let us kind of have a very close interaction with you. Also, at this time, I may be wrapping up the program. If you are just joining us for the first time, please do check the message section. You can see our social media links is posted there. I have our LinkedIn, the WhatsApp, the X, and also our YouTube channel, of course. So you can follow us in any of those channels. And also, we do have a weekly lightning talks that we normally host every Tuesday. So do stay in touch with that. We also have a lot of things going on and even more exciting stuffs that we are yet to make public in the section. Also, we are also doing a coding bootcamp, which they are almost rounding up soon, where we train individuals on a Java Spring Boot. So that's what we are all about. So this is a community-driven platform. So do well to stay in touch in what we are doing. Do well to follow us in any of our channel. Reach out if you need help for something. As long as Java Spring Boot is concerned, that's what we do. So at this point, I'll be wrapping it up. And most formally, I will say thank you very much, Mr. Jether Rodrigues. Please, thank you for being here today. I will say welcome to Nigeria. Yeah.
Oh, nice.
So welcome to.
Yeah.
So I've just offered you maybe one of our local dishes, but then that remains when you are here physically present. We'll surely do that. So thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for. Yeah. So thank you guys for joining.
Thank you guys.
And see you. Yeah. See you in other sections.
See you. Have a nice weekend.
Yeah.
Bye.
Yeah. So bye everyone. Bye.